The Chengdu J-15T Flying Shark, and its variants, known to NATO as the Flanker K or Flanker X2, is a 4th generation Chinese carrier fighter. Both in real life and in War Thunder, it's certainly unique and offers a fascinating insight into the history of Chinese aviation. Join me in this video as we take a dive into the Faisha, going over its history, its state in War Thunder, and how to play it. In the 1970s, the Soviet Navy's only operational carrier fighter, the Yak-38, was found to be unable to perform its role well due to its very limited range, payload, and overall performance, which severely hampered the capability of their Project 1143 Kiev-class carriers. To get around this, the Project 1160, 1153, and 1143 carriers were proposed, which could have carried a variety of navalized variants of existing aircraft, such as the MiG-23K, the MiG-29K, the Yak-141, and, most relevant for us today, the Su-27K. Design concepts for the Su-27K started in 1978, and with Sukhoi and Mikoyan being the main rivals, work proceeded at the new Nikhta facility in Crimea on a steam catapult and arresting gear, until 1981, when the Soviet government cancelled the catapult system in a downsizing of the Project 1143.5 Kuznetsov carriers. As such, the Su-27K and MiG-29K would have to use a ski jump. In 1984, the Soviet government officially instructed Sukhoi to develop an air defense fighter, and 2 prototypes for the new T-10K were built with NAPO in 1986. The first T-10K made its maiden flight in 1987 at Nikhta, where flight tests with both it and the MiG-29K continued until 1989, when in November, Viktor Pugachev became the first Russian to conventionally land on a carrier. However, issues with the blast deflectors nearly caused a crash, and meant that a Ka-27PS search and rescue helicopter had to be flown next to the carrier on subsequent flights. A number of prototypes would be built, and in 1999 the T-10K would be entered into service as the Su-33. That, however, is a story for another day, as right now our interest lies with one particular T-10K prototype, T-10K-7, which was the 7th built. While most of the T-10K aircraft ended up in Russia after the collapse of the Soviet Union, 3 ended up in Ukraine. Both Ukraine and Russia found themselves quite strapped for cash in the 1990s and early 2000s. And so when China offered them good money to scrap a few of their carriers, 2 Kiev classes, Kiev and Minsk, and 1 Kuznetsov class, Varyak, they were happy to go along, and Ukraine even sold them 2 of their T-10K prototypes. It's not like they had much use for them. China, of course, just wanted to scrap them, and definitely didn't turn Minsk into a theme park, Kiev into a luxury hotel, and Varyak into their Type 001 aircraft carrier, right? And even if they did, it's not like they'd do anything with those T-10Ks. With the PLAN ambitiously developing a new carrier capability, there was a need for a new carrier-capable fighter. With no older carrier aircraft to go off of, and a suspiciously Kuznetsov-class shaped carrier making its way along a 4-year voyage from Ukraine to Dailan, the T-10K-7 purchased alongside it was to be used to aid the development of such a plane. Buying Su-33s from Russia was floated, but Russia was unwilling to sell them the smaller quantity they needed, while China knew the Su-33 would be out of date soon and wanted to make a domestic variant anyway. In 2006, development of what was now designated the J-15 Faisha, or Flying Shark, with the NATO reporting name of Flanker K or Flanker X2, was officially started by Shenyang. The J-15 first took to the skies in 2009, with its first simulated ski jump takeoff on land occurring in 2010. On the 25th of November 2012, the Flying Shark successfully performed its first takeoff and landing on the new Liaoning, which had been the heavily refurbished and redeveloped Varyak. This was such an amazing feat that Luo Yang, the general director of the whole J-15 program and chairman of Shenyang, who was present on the carrier, had a sudden heart attack and dropped dead. After flight tests were completed, the first 24 J-15s were delivered to the PLAN, and the Flying Shark officially entered service. Essentially, the J-15 could be summed up as a J-11B in the body of an Su-33, albeit not the exact same body, but largely similar. The J-15 used the same Type 1493 radar as the J-11B, and could carry the same PL-8Bs and PL-12, although the engines were still AL-31s, as the planned WS-10 had issues and wasn't anywhere near ready. The J-15 could also carry anti-ship missiles, and could even carry buddy refueling pods. Development didn't just stop at the J-15, however. Aside from the J-15S two-seat trainer, an electronic warfare variant, the J-15D, was developed. This twin-seat aircraft plays a similar role to the EA-18G Growler, with large ECM pods replacing the wingtip missile pylons, and carries an electronic warfare officer in the second seat. While the J-15 was up to the J-11B standard, China had made advances on numerous fronts, notably AESA radars, better engines, more advanced weapons, and, most importantly, a new design for their third aircraft carrier, with an electromagnetic catapult instead of a ski jump. While the introduction of a catapult alone would have necessitated a new variant, as the J-15 wasn't compatible with it, the other advances gave them a chance to do an entire overhaul. First of all, the radar was replaced with a new modern AESA radar, which gave it the ability to carry and fire PL-15s and PL-10s. The engines also received an upgrade, now being the indigenous WS-10B, which gave it improved flight performance, although this was only on the initial aircraft, and for whatever reason, subsequent batches have been equipped with the old AL-31F. Most importantly, however, the J-15T was made compatible with an EMALS catapult, and in September 2025, it performed its first set of catapult takeoffs and landings on their new Type 003 Fujian, after years of ground tests. The J-15T, alongside the KG-600 AWACS and the J-35 5th generation fighter, all successfully took off, the J-35 being the first 5th gen fighter launched with an electromagnetic catapult at sea, something even the US Navy's F-35Cs aren't yet capable of doing. Alongside the J-15T, a similar upgraded variant of the J-15D was introduced, the J-15DT, with the same upgrades. Up to around 30 J-15Ts have been built so far, alongside over 100 J-15s. In War Thunder, the J-15T is found at rank 9, and was added to the March 2026 9th Wave update. While there are a number of differences, especially in flight model, missile count, and countermeasures, the J-15T in-game is remarkably similar to the J-10C. Much like the J-10C, the J-15T's radar is the KLJ-10A, an AESA system with 200 km range, 8 data link channels, detailed NCTR, and even surface search GMTI modes. It also features an IRST system, but comes at the cost of a relatively narrow for the BR gimbal limit of only 70 degrees to either side, although it does allow 90 degrees upwards, the exact same limitations as the J-10C. This is despite the model being physically larger, which means the radar is almost certainly incorrectly modeled, as even if it is the same radar, it would have significantly more room to gimbal around. Ultimately, as so little is known about the J-15T as it's such a new aircraft, it's impossible to know for sure, and there's unlikely to be any sources able to confirm this bug for years to come. The J-15T's RWR, the KRKZ2200, is a stack clone of the J-10C's KJ8602A RWR, and is supported by the same S740 MORS. Unlike the J-10C, however, the J-15T only has 48 countermeasures, a reduction from its already low count that severely limits it at its BR. As such, I'd make sure that your automatic countermeasures are turned off. The engines too are the same as those on the J-10C, the WS-10Bs. These provide 8,620 kgf thrust dry, or 13,580 wet. While this sounds like an increase over the AL-31s, they don't have great thrust curves, and so in practice the J-15T is slower than the likes of the Su-30SM. The flanker airframe in general is heavy, and the added weight of the carrier equipment makes this one of the heaviest flankers, although the lighter materials do make it lighter than the Su-33 and the Su-30SMs. Much like other flankers, you can still do the Cobra, as you do have a maneuver mode button to turn off your AoA limiter, but it's not going to win you many fights as your weapons aren't well suited to close range engagements, especially compared to other flankers. Onto suspended ordnance now, and we'll start with air-to-air. The J-15T's main advantage over the J-10C, outside of CAS, is your missile count. The J-15T can carry a whopping 14 missiles. The infrared homing Fox 1 you can carry, a PL-8B, and you can carry up to 6, although in most cases you'll only be carrying 4, as the inner IR pylons can also carry other weapons. These are upgrades of the PL-8, itself derived from the Israeli Python 3, and are all-aspect missiles with gate-width IRCCM. They don't have quite the acceleration of the PL-5E2 or the pull of the R-73, but they're decent all-rounders, and they're all you have. Your active radar homing Fox 3s are the Chinese-built PL-12s and PL-12As, and you can carry up to 10 of either one, the 12A being a direct upgrade that has GPS guidance for its IOG, which could help it hit shots better off boresight, as well as a slightly better booster that helps it at longer ranges. The PL-12 used to be a pretty competitive missile, previously being one of the best ARH missiles in game, as while it lacked the crazy pull of the Mika, it was still one of the best at close range, and could also work well at a medium range too. This was until a few weeks ago, when both PL-12s had their maneuverability shadow nerfed into the ground, and now a lot of top tier aircrafts can simply outroll them, with some planes like the Rafale and Eurofighter being able to straight up outpull them at close ranges, something unthinkable for a modern ARH missile. Onto ground ordnance, and the J-15T has a decently large arsenal available to it. Aside from the usual unguided bombs and rockets, it can carry a number of guided ordnance too. First up are the laser-guided bombs, of which the J-15T can carry two types, the GB-3 and the GB-1000. Both use dual-mode laser and GPS guidance, and both benefit from the targeting pod. Although, interestingly, the GB-3s don't actually require it, and if using them without one, you can actually laser targets at any angle, despite not having a laser designator, although the lack of a sight doesn't make this practical. This is almost certainly a bug, so it might not be a thing by the time of this video. The GB-3s are 500-pound bombs that you can bring 10 of, while the GB-1000s are 1,000 kilo, though you can only bring 2. The targeting pod in question is the KADC-03A, the same found on the JH-7A, J-10A, and J-11B. This has good thermals, target tracking, and can zoom between 4 times and 49 times. Onto GPS-guided glide bombs, and the J-15T can carry up to 8 250 kilo LS-6 250s or 6 LS-6 500s. These are standard glide bombs and don't need a targeting pod. More notably, both also have IR-guided versions, the LS-6 IR 250 and 500. You can carry the same amount of both, and they differ in that they have dual-mode IR and GPS tracking, being able to track targets via thermal signature. These are quite good, and don't need a targeting pod as they have internal cameras. Moving on, we have two ATGMs, the KD-88 and the KD-88A. These are subsonic cruise missiles with a very good range, and they differ in that the regular KD-8 has TV guidance, while the 88A has IR guidance, making it better in most circumstances. You can carry up to 4 of either, and they don't need a targeting pod. They don't have very large warheads, so if they don't directly hit something, they're unlikely to kill it. These, coincidentally, share an airframe with our final weapon, which is an anti-ship missile, the YJ-83K. This has an ARH seeker which goes active at 15 kilometers and can be targeted using the plane's radar in GMTI or C modes. You can carry up to 4 of these, and they have a very long range of up to 180 kilometers, although they seem to erroneously lack any sort of terrain avoidance, requiring you to need a straight shot over sea at any ships you fire them at, as they're ski skimming, and will hit any islands in the way. Rather disappointingly, unlike most other anti-ship missiles, they're not very effective in-game, as they have relatively small warheads when compared with torpedoes. They target the superstructure instead of the waterline, and when launching multiple at the same target, they usually hit the same spot. In Air RB, the J-15T sits at 14.7, where it's really not all that great. Especially after the PL-12 nerfs, it's quite a subpar option at top tier when compared with other jets around it. Its low countermeasure count being one of the biggest drawbacks. One of the only things it has going for it is its rather large missile count. 14 is among the best at top tier. Its AESA radar, while not bad, doesn't have the gimbal limits you'll see in several other fighters at 14.7, and in general it's at a disadvantage against pretty much everything at its BR. When taking it out, I'd recommend only bringing 8 to 12 flares with the rest as chaff, as your airframe doesn't lend itself very well to getting in IR range anyway, while 75% fuel seems to be enough to last most matches. For loadout, you'll of course want to bring 10 PL-12As and 4 PL-8Bs. It may be tempting to grab some anti-ship missiles if you get a map with ships, but their damage is so lackluster they'll rarely kill anything, and those pylons are better suited for more missiles. On maps with carrier spawns, you can spawn on them, although if you spawn on a flat top one with a catapult, you'll have to turn around and take off from further back, as the J-15T spawns too far forwards to catch the catapult, because of course there wasn't enough wrong with it already. Spawning on carriers isn't super useful as you miss out on an air spawn, but it's at least unique. After spawning in, if you want to survive you're going to have to play very passively. The J-15T has pretty much nothing going up for it up close. Staying fast and at a decent altitude is often where you'll find your only success, so climb. Due to the large missile count and your AESA radar, you're actually decently geared to shooting down incoming missiles. This may be preferable to chaffing, especially versus longer range ones, as you have such little chaff. Make sure to intercept them early, as PL-12As after their recent nerf have a very bad close range performance, and will struggle to pull in at closer ranges, especially sub 10 kilometers. I wouldn't ever recommend base bombing in the J-15T, as it requires you to ruin your positioning, as well as taking up far too many missile hardpoints. I wish I'd be able to give you better advice on how to do well in this, but the sad reality is that it's not a good plane, and unfortunately I'd actually recommend against flying it in its current state. In Ground RB, the J-15T sits at 13.0, where it fits into China's top-tier lineup and competes with the J-10C and the Z-10ME as a CAS option. For CAS weapons, I'd recommend focusing on your LS6 IRs, the 500s where possible, and the KD-88As. Both have IR guidance, and so are likely to be your best bets in killing enemies. It's worth taking a loadout like this. Keeping at least a couple PL-12s is good for defending yourself, and you're only giving up one bomb or ATGM to do that. If you're bringing both, I'd recommend firing the LS6 IRs first, as they'll slowly guide in, before firing your KD-88As. You can do both off their own internal cameras, so no need for a targeting pod. You'll want to fire in this order, as the slower glide bombs may act as radar clutter and let the KD-88s get through first, or vice versa, they both kill just as good. When compared to the J-10C, despite being a much larger airframe, you don't actually get a larger number of guided weapons. The J-10C can carry a maximum 10 LS6 IRs, as well as 2 PL-12s and 2 PL-8s, and while the J-15T can carry a max of 8 LS6 IRs, 2 KD-8As, and just 2 PL-8s. Admittedly, the LS6 IRs are mostly 500 kilos instead of 250, but that doesn't make a huge practical difference. Overall, I'd still recommend the J-10C and or the Z-10ME over the J-15T for CAS in Ground RB. Once you've got your J-15T, you're going to want to spade it. Start out with flares and chaff, PL-8Bs, G-suit, new boosters, and airframe. Those should get you to rank 3, where you can grab PL-12s, cover, and wings repair, followed by PL-12A, engine, compressor, and fuselage repair. With your performance spaded, you can turn to air-to-ground weapons, grab the LS6 IRs, the KD-88 IRs, and the K-ADC-03A targeting pod, before grabbing the offensive 30mm, new 30mm cannons, and the EFS, finishing it off with anything else you need. Now, if you'll allow me a brief rant, Pretty much everything about the J-15T as it is in War Thunder annoys me greatly. It doesn't carry any of its signature weapons, the PL-10 or the PL-15. It doesn't have any sort of ECM, so its low countermeasure count kills it. The PL-12s that it does have just been nerfed into the ground for seemingly zero reason. Gaijin didn't even try to justify it with the source. Its radar and RWR are almost certainly incorrectly modeled because they just copy-pasted it from the J-10C. Its anti-ship missiles are basically dead weight, its engines are likely underperforming, it never carried PL-8Bs, and they had to give it a J-11 pylon or it would clip through the wings. And don't even get me started on how its main missile, the PL-12A, doesn't actually exist beyond a Wikipedia page. Frankly, as much as I love Chinese jets, naval aircraft, and the J-15T in real life, the J-15T shouldn't have come to War Thunder anywhere near as soon as it has, and a plane I've been looking forward to for a while has been such a disappointment. J-15T? At this rate, this plane will be my J-15th reason why. And that's it for the J-15T as it currently stands in War Thunder. I hope to revisit this in the future, either upon the addition of the regular J-15, and or when the J-15T receives its proper armament of PL-15s and PL-10s. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, then liking and subscribing would mean a lot to me. If you want to vote on the topic of the next video, there'll be a poll up on my Discord, link in the description. On an unrelated channel note, I've started streaming occasionally on Twitch. Not on a regular schedule, and not even War Thunder, but if you'd like to watch me occasionally fail spectacularly in Kerbal Space Program, there's a link to my Twitch channel in the description. And that's all from me. I've been girltwink. Fly safe.